All right, y'all. What's good? What is good? Welcome back to the Onyx Report, Black Masculinist news for the day. Hope y'all are good. Man, it has been a busy one, but we are getting it in. Hope everyone is good. Like, share, the whole deal. Yeah, I got too many things going. There we go. Too many things going on at the same time. But anyway, welcome back to the Onyx Report. Hope everybody's well. Like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you will, so we can continue to bring you independent Black male thought. Shout out to Barry Little for starting us off tonight with the tuition drop, as he says. Much appreciated. Salute Doc and the Onyx Brotherhood. Real talk. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know the deal. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo. You know what it is. Super chat, support the show. You can also do the Patreon and become a member, become a patron, where you can support the Onyx Report, the Institute for Black Male Studies, and the Onyx TV network, all of which, do to keep things going. So it is what it is. You guys know how to go about it. So much appreciation to Barry. Also much appreciation to Greg and Dardar for the Cash Apps. Thank you very much. I'm going to get it started here. So tonight or today, usually I go a little bit later, and I will be getting back to my regularly scheduled program, except that tonight is the last night of the semester. So I do have a 6 o'clock Pacific time class to do. So I will be leaving just before that. Shout out to Dr. Thunder. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate the support. Got Keep It 100 in the house. What's up, Ace? Barry, what's going on? No one, what's up? I'm listening. What's happening? Got Creative in the house. Christopher. Chemistry, what's good? Heru. Blood Crow, Davion. The Poor Man's Passport Guide. Good morning from Asia. Shout out to you. Appreciate it. I am broadcasting tonight on Inner Light Radio. You can check that out and go to innerlightradio.com. I'm obviously on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So you can go to any of those and check out the show and support us there. Inye, appreciate the support. Says, what up, Doc? What up to you? Thank you for that. So yeah, we got a lot to talk about, and this is really kind of spinning off from the last show I did, where I brought on a gentleman I've had on before to give us an update on his situation in court in regard to his daughter and his baby's mother. And so from that discussion, there's some things that jumped off that I want to delve into a little more deeply, because he kind of made me aware of a concept, or at least a term that I had not thought about before. I mean, I've thought about the phenomenon it refers to, but not necessarily the term itself. So I want to start by giving us a little bit of an overview. And I think this is something, let me see. You're probably going to give me a little bit of Aquatech. Appreciate that Cash App. Probably going to give me a little strike for this. Poor Man's Passport Guy. Appreciate that support. I'm trying to, not a strike, but they might give me a little something. Hold on. Let me see if I can. Okay. Let me see if I can go old school with it. Bear with me for a moment. Just thought about something I could try. Kind of split this up. They've been kind of on me a bit too much lately, and I'm not real sure why, but they've been hitting me with some light copyright stuff, and y'all know I don't really show a lot of people's stuff, so it's been kind of weird. But I think I'm going to try to do this in a different kind of way. Let me see if they'll let me do this here. Bop, 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 bop. Anyway, let me do this. So while I'm doing that, shout out to Killer the Game. I'm going to bring my boy in, and I sent out some other invites. We'll see if anyone else comes through, but let me go ahead and bring in my good brother here, who is also the beat maker behind my soundtrack, the Green Gorilla. Hey,
what's happening, bro?
What's going on, man?
Man, I'm just glad I got lights, man. Like I said, bro.
He said, I'm
glad I got lights, man. That's been raining here. Like yesterday, it rained for about maybe 8-9 hours, and the lightning was pretty close.
Okay.
I opened the door, and I swear to God, man, I feel like I was like 3 or 4 feet away from a lightning strike. I mean, and they're, like the lady next door, she has cats, man. The cats, like...
Kelly, thank you. Unnecessary legal.
Sorry about that, brother.
It's all good.
Wait, what were you saying?
No, I'm saying the cats, man. I mean, cats are usually cool. They move slowly. They really don't get too excited.
Mm-hmm.
Them jokers got excited. Them jokers got excited with that lightning struck. Boy, them boys was like, they was up and at them.
Giving me the business, huh?
Man. But anyway, man, today, man, I was about to wash the dishes, man. And I heard a loud boom in the backyard. So I went out there to look, and apparently, I don't know what happened, man. Maybe a squirrel or something hit the transformer. But it's still wet out there, so that could have, it could be a variety of different things. But I was out of electricity for about 3 or 4 hours, and I had just started to make another video, pre-recorded, and all of that momentum got.
Well, you gonna be able to get on air or to do a regular?
I'm on air now.
No, I mean, so when's your next live?
Probably tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Actually, it is tomorrow. Me and Sanddog getting down.
Okay. You tell people what the subject is, or y'all still kind of working?
You know, we can do that, man. I got to look it up because
It's all good.
No, I'm looking it up right now, man. Because I don't pay attention, man, for very long, man. But ultimately, yeah. So the idea is freedom versus acceptance. Like, what do you really want?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want freedom, or do you want to accept the conditions that you live in? I'm assuming, he's going to say something to this effect. That, you actually have accommodated yourself to oppression.
Kelly, thank you.
God damn it. Man, I'm sorry, man.
No, you're good.
Weird.
Get yourself together, man.
I'm back to my rookie days, damn it.
Yeah, man. You looking real skeet out here right now, man. You looking like Marilyn Monroe, man, with the wind blowing. Got a dress raising up, man.
Tell me if you could hear this real quick.
Going through some unnecessary.
Did you hear that?
Yes, indeed.
All right. We in business, folks. We are in business. My apologies. But yeah, man, I wanted you to finish letting them know what you're talking about, though.
Oh, yeah. So, basically it's a show, and it's going to be more than likely, I don't dictate the topics that Sanddog talks about when he comes on my show, but I'm assuming he's going to say, in the United States, you already know what the price of doing business is. The price is that you can't be the top dog. So if you want to be the top dog, you're probably going to have to carve out a space for yourself on this rock that we call the earth somewhere else.
All right,
that's what I assume. What's up, BGS? Man?
Hey, what's
man,
going on, Gigi?
Hey, man, you need to put that damn lightsaber up, bro.
Nah, I can't, man.
Hey, man,
can't.
you can cut somebody with that thing, man.
Can't, man. Got too many haters out there, man. Need to be beheaded. I heard somebody's trying to build a plane as they fly it,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
We old school.
That's what I heard, man.
But let me...
The rivers are starting to come apart. Okay.
And it is. But I got it together. So I'm going to show y'all what we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and play it for you. Here we go. This is off of Fox 2.
Legal drama. This after receiving a letter that he had fathered a child with a woman he'd never even met. Now vindication of sorts. It's a follow-up to a story I brought you earlier this year on his legal fight and what comes next.
She don't know me. How do you just put my name down? How do you just put anybody's names down? I don't know her, never seen her. Still to this day, haven't talked to her. And it just proved out that the baby has no ties to my name. Thankfully, the lady did bring the child in to get tested. And that's all I needed to happen.
This letter from friend of the court reads in part, Dear Mr. Smith, enclosed is a copy of the genetic test results, excluding you as the father.
Let's just set the record. I trust my husband because I know his character, man of integrity.
I would like to say relief, but it's kind of like confirmation, really, because I already knew that I had no ties and no links to this child or this woman. And to have that letter come to my house, it was a little unnerving, but not from the standpoint of being caught up in something. It was a little unnerving that, a letter like this could come to my house having no legitimacy to it.
We first brought you the story of D'Angelo Smith in late January when he presented some wild allegations against friend of the court in Berrien County. The initial letter sent to his home stated a woman who we are not naming alleging him to be the father of her daughter, a child between the age of 1 and 2 years old.
She's a stripper from Detroit. We had a one-night stand at some hotel that we supposed to have been and went to, and this is a story that was told to me.
While playing the waiting game for the alleged mother to bring in the baby for a DNA sample, the school where D'Angelo Smith teaches received an inquiry for possible garnishment if things did not go in his favor.
Where it made it not something that was being alleged, now it's something that's being taken into action. And there's no paternity been established.
But clearly, these test results confirm that to no longer be the case.
With that being said, strong marriage or not, clean past or not, that's a very tough letter for anyone to receive.
Absolutely.
Without any proof.
Absolutely. It is. It is. The main things that they have to provide to the state of Michigan is a name and a birth date and where they live. That's easy information for someone to gather off of Google, off of Facebook, off of any kind of social media platform.
People who have checkered past, who have done things in the past, who have, stepped out and did things that was unbecoming of a real man, right? And so, but they changed and they cleaned up their act and they've gotten better, which all of us have the opportunity of doing or getting better. But a letter like this coming to that house, a man that has changed his ways, that has walked in a different direction, this letter could be absolutely devastating because of what you've done before.
We made several calls to lawmakers in Lansing who are familiar with this particular topic to get some answers.
It's very unfortunate, but paternity fraud is not a unique, unusual situation in Michigan.
Senator Jim Runstead tells me he's been pushing for new legislation on the matter during the past 8 years, saying right now there's no penalty for lying.
Senator, what was the opposition for not passing this kind of legislation?
Well, maybe it would hinder mothers who don't want to name a particular guy or they made a mistake, but you had to knowingly name the wrong person. It becomes emotional stuff.
Respectfully, to mandate that DNA testing for the child is conducted first before a letter is sent to someone's home alleging they may be the father of a child regarding a woman whom they have never met, doesn't that seem like common sense type of legislation?
I tell you, Joshua, the common sense goes out the window. I'd be more than happy to put that bill in. I'm telling you, it wouldn't even get a hearing in committee. I'll guarantee it wouldn't even get a hearing in committee. I ran across this before.
And the only reason I believe that this woman came in was because of Fox 2. Fox 2 provided a platform where the word got out and this word spread it like wildfire quickly to the point where the lady came in. Now I asked the courts about the friend of the courts about bringing her in. They said, well, we just have to wait until she comes in. But I thank God that Fox 2 provided a platform where the lady was able to come in, but everybody does not have that opportunity for Fox 2 to show up at their doorstep to help them out.
A lot to wrap your head around, guys. Real quick, as we did in our initial story, we called front of the court for a comment, but have not heard back. In the meantime, Senator Jim Runstead tells me if you're caught in a similar situation, your best option is to hire an attorney if possible. Also, and this is very key, reach out to your lawmakers. The senator says more bipartisanship is much needed on this very touchy matter.
It could destroy a whole relationship. I mean, luckily, here's a guy that has,
he has a solid household.
That's very under. Some people would have packed up and left and said, I just don't believe you. You could have destroyed a life.
Bingo.
Unbelievable story. For them to send that to work. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if you worked at a certain place and the rumors would start to spread?
Yes.
I mean, it is potentially not only family
definition of character in the public eye.
Your character and your life.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine how frustrated that family was while they were trying to get answers.
Highly frustrated, Amy and Jay. Highly frustrated because, again, you're getting an inquiry about your finances without even confirmation if you're connected to this particular case.
Where's the proof? Wow.
A lot more dialogue is needed on this matter, Lansing, for sure.
Thanks.
All right, y'all. So shout out to Barry. Appreciate that reminder. Fair use. Y'all know what the deal is. So this is an example. This is an example of something we're going to get into tonight. Just one of many. As a matter of fact, I think this is one that Gigi is going to be able to really drop his foot into in terms of, life experience. But really tonight, we're talking about the concept of litigation abuse, right? So in this particular example, we see a gentleman who's been falsely accused of being the father of a child to a woman that he's never met. And all it took for her to file that was his name and some basic information like his birthday, right? And so from there, if she had not come in for the DNA test to be performed on her child, he would have been garnished, as far as that's concerned. So we've seen cases similar to this over the years, variations on the same theme where men can be just falsely, appropriated into a process they have nothing to do with. But when we talk about litigation abuse, it's not limited to issues of paternity. And by the way, shout out to Carnell Smith, who I will have back on the show sometime probably in June, who deals with a lot of paternity issues. I'm gonna have him back on to give us an update on where his work is now. Because despite popular, assumption, brothers in the manosphere are operating. And BGS and I were talking about this earlier today, right? Do you want to drop a quick mention about, the states that we're starting to see policy move in regard to the manosphere's influence?
The biggest one now is the biggest two are Texas trying to repeal no-fault divorce, and the second one is Maryland actually passing a law about 50-50 paternity,
Yeah.
in Maryland.
And then Tennessee in terms of DNA testing at birth.
Yep.
So people are really underestimating the influence. And I can tell you, I've spoken to two politicians directly. One politician, I think it was in Maryland, who talked to myself and Dennis Sperling and asked for clarity. And the black male political agenda is also something they're referencing. So you're talking about a grassroots movement with no resources, no investment, no funding from any corporate or governmental organizations or institutions. And yet we're starting to see push and movement and traction in regard to some of these policies. So I just want people to understand, just because it doesn't seem like, it's not something on the news where people are being, content creators are being called out by name. Don't get it twisted. We're having an influence, whether folks like it or not. But let me see. In terms of this, so let me go ahead and kind of share something here. So we're going to look at how litigation abuse is framed, right? So I want you to pay attention to the top left corner. You can see when I looked up litigation abuse, and again, I got the concept from Troy, a guest of the show the other night, who, I showed video of him being assaulted by his then baby mother. She since took the child. He didn't see the child for a couple of years, if I'm not mistaken. He talked about that. He had video of her abusing him. He's been in and out of court with her over and over again. And so he talked about litigation abuse, which made sense as a concept, but I had never really reflected on it in and of itself. So when I looked it up, the first place I saw it come up was on womenslaw.org, right? Womenslaw.org. So this is a concept, in other words, that has really been appropriated in some respects, by women in terms of what happens to them in regard to the court. But let me go ahead and let Snoop Dogg explain a little bit of that to y'all.
Can't hear nothing, Doc.
Yeah.
God damn it. Y'all can't hear it?
No.
It just played in the last show. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
Technology.
Frustrating. The last show wasn't a problem, and now it's a problem, man. This is horrible, man. Oh man.
Gotta trade Jarvis in.
Huh?
Gotta trade Jarvis in.
Yeah, man. I think I got another update too. I think that might be playing with some of this too. So I've been having all kinds of little issues that I did not expect today. But crap. That's weird because I played it in the last show and everybody heard it. I don't know. Well, anyway, so we gotta go back to old school. So basically, the way this has been appropriated, feminists in particular use it to frame the idea that you have a woman who's been abused by a big bad boyfriend or husband, and then on top of her being physically abused, he begins to accost her in court with a series of different filings, right? Repeated filing over petitions or motions, many adjournments, appealing the judge's orders without a legal basis to do so, or taking other actions that make the victim repeatedly come to court, right? But the interesting thing about it, when I was talking to Troy, it seemed evident to me that the concept applies to men, particularly black men, in ways that we don't really think of as a form of abuse. Especially when you start talking about family court, when you start to talk about custody, when you start to talk about divorce. This is something that I think men actually suffer from to a great extent. And it's not framed that way. The only, again, you can see the site. The only way it's generally framed as a problem is when it comes to women. But I particularly wanted to hear Gigi weigh in on how men, and black men in particular, are on the receiving end of litigation.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I mean, what you have is a paradigm contemporarily where, you know, men have been, I mean, ever since dominant feminism, you know, kind of like got its way in the court of public opinion, it's been put forth as commonplace to assume that women are passive victims, men are victimizers, and that's just the narrative and the discourse everybody runs with. They don't run with the idea or the concept that violence can come from any quarter by any individual, whether they be male or female, straight or gay, bi or trans, you know, white, black, red, brown, purple, whatever the case may be. We've masculinized abuse is what we've done. And we've, you know, gendered victimization. And so women are victims, perennial victims, men are perennial abusers, and that's the script. And, you know, the legal system in the United States is pretty much sticking with it. So, you know, why not, if you're a woman, you know, throw darts? That's what I consider it to be. You know, it's like closing your eyes, throwing a dart, and hoping that you hit a bullseye. Okay? If you don't hit a bullseye, if there's no penalization and there are no repercussions, why not? I mean, like, it's one thing, you know, to have to pay to throw the dart. It's another thing to not have to pay at all and you might hit a bullseye. Why not throw the dart?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Now, if there's some sort of penalization, some sort of humiliation, or, you know, any kind of sanction that might, you know, result as, you know, punishment for you making a false accusation, then, you know, you might think twice about doing it. But since, you know, typically there is no repercussions at all, why not?
Right.
And, you know, like, this is like, it reminds me of what Michelle Alexander said about stop and frisk, you know, of black men in the book, The New Jim Crow. It's like, okay, well, you know, you don't know who has drugs, but you know, if you keep frisking people, you're going to find them at some point. You know?
Eventually, yeah.
You know, so why not just stop as many people as possible, and then, you know, eventually you'll end up catching somebody who has drugs or whatever the case may be. So the idea is, you know, you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find a Prince Charming, you know.
But the other element to this, though, that I want to put on the table is also something I heard from Troy the other night, and I think a lot of guys have experienced, especially in regard to like a divorce or things of that nature, where a judge will make you responsible for her legal fees.
Yep.
So if we tie in not just, you know, the fact that you're going to court over whatever she may deem, you know, she wants to put you through, you might be responsible for her legal fees against you, right? On a repeated basis, right? So this, when we talk about litigation abuse, there are also other subcomponents to it. And I think overall, it has an impact on, you know, black men. When you think about, you know, going to court, it's not generally a positive thought, right? But I think the difference is for many women, especially in regard to family court, the thought is not a negative one. I think they even pass this down because the idea that they're going to get custody, you're going to have to pay for her court fees, I think it's common. And it's so common that I don't think going to court in and of itself bothers women. I think, as a matter of fact, when it comes to divorce, I think they're quite ready for it. What do you think about this, BGS?
They're even coached. You know, I mean, the social worker has coached in the very beginning throughout the whole process. So they get guided and coached and led through the whole process, okay, against the men. Men don't. Have to pay for that. Had to pay for advice, had to pay for lawyers, had to pay for experts to come in and actually tell them what to do. And then on top of that, pay for the judge's time and the court's time and her fees. It's all bad on the man's side.
Yeah.
Women get all this help, you know.
So let me stop this, man. I got something going on. I'm sorry about that, man. There's people, you know.
And y'all make sure you support the Green Gorilla channel, support BGS IBMOR's channel. If you're not subscribed to either one, I don't know what's going on with you, but make sure you do. You know, donate to both, the whole deal. But this in and of itself, I mean, most men are familiar with. I'm familiar with. I never went through a divorce, but I can't tell you how many brothers that I know that have. You know, but the same tropes keep playing out. I just never thought about the weaponization of court as a form of abuse in and of itself. And again, even when you look at it, you know, how it's defined, it's pretty much defined in terms of her experiences. So if we go further into the definition, it continues. It says, unfortunately, litigation abuse is challenging to deal with because it's hard to limit someone's right to file in court. If your state has a law that specifically allows for it, such as these laws in Washington, Idaho, and Tennessee, the judge might be more willing to issue an order restricting a person's right to file. If you're facing litigation abuse, you may want to try proving to the judge that the cases the abuser keeps bringing are not based on a good reason, right, or without merit, and are filed instead to harass you. Sometimes a judge may issue an order that will help to limit the litigation abuse or its effects by, and then it gives you several bullet points about what the judge can do in terms of that. But this is interesting in and of itself, right? Because not only does this mean that, women tend to bring to, and women initiate the majority of divorces. We can argue that as it pertains to family court, it's far more likely that women are bringing men to court than men bringing women.
Right.
But according to these laws in Washington, Idaho, and Tennessee, she can even cap your responses in court in terms of you filing by listing you as the harasser.
Yeah.
Because even the way the policy is framed, or even the way the whole notion of litigation abuse is framed, it's framed around you being the aggressor, her being the victim, right? Nobody sees this as something men suffer from, and yet men can readily talk about going to court, especially in regard to child custody and divorce, as something she initiates, knowing full well that most often she's going to benefit. Any thoughts about that, fellas?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Gigi.
My thought is, ever since second wave feminism, pretty much hijacked the civil rights movement, and the women, they just kept pushing and pushing and pushing to get more and more favor from legislators, from the judicial system, from the executive branch via the police departments, bureaucracies. I mean, they pretty much have their way. This narrative, it's there. And, the funny thing about it, though, is this narrative is sticking even in the face of evidence that countermands, the presuppositions related to the discourse and the narrative or the script. So, there's a lot of research that demonstrates that violence is multivalent, or bivalent or bidirectional. There's evidence that, many of the same things that women claim that they're victims of, they're also perpetrators of. Nobody seems to care. And, the comment from the attorney, that you played the clip from, what's alarming about it is that this guy's made propositions for bills in order to redress some of these injustices that men are suffering from. And he's basically saying that, nobody wants to even entertain the possibility of passing a bill like this. In other words, justice for men is an afterthought. It's not something that's really actually being entertained or taken seriously. And then one has to ask the question, why is this the case? And primarily, my assumption is going to be, it's a big assumption, but I need for somebody to prove me wrong about it. Men aren't willing to defend themselves against this kind of stuff.
Right.
Primarily, they're just like, okay, well, it's just the way it is. There's nothing you could do. Accept it, fall on the sword, take it, and rebuild and start over. Doesn't matter if your reputation is ruined. Doesn't matter if you've been assaulted, insulted. Doesn't matter if you've been financially or psychologically abused in any way. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you're harassed. That's a function of manhood for you to be able to bear that.
Yeah.
And to take it in, like Atlas would put the weight of the world on his shoulders, or like Sisyphus having his liver torn out by some ravenous bird every day. It's something you're supposed to endure. Okay? Yeah. And some men perceive this as, a feature and a function of masculinity. I think it's insanity. Okay.
Yes.
And not only that, look, this, idea of men having to take on the burden of women in the legal system, it's a vestige of coverture law. Okay. And my question is, why is the family court system, why is the judicial system so adamant about equality and parity and equal treatment in front of the law, but want to maintain vestiges that protect women, even though women now have like greater, in many instances, they have greater like employment and scholastic opportunities than men.
Mm-hmm.
So when is the law going to catch up with the economics or the, the kind of like social status related to these issues? I don't see it. I don't see it, especially if men don't step up and say, this is something wrong here. Because men don't want to. They don't want to step up and say anything about it. And that's unfortunate.
Well, go ahead.
They've been socialized not to. And it won't happen until men get tired of it.
Right.
Because it's the reason they do it is because it's easier to get the men to do it than the women to do it. Because women are actually vocal. They will speak up. They will say something. They will protest. Men don't normally do that. So it's actually easier. The path of least resistance is the men.
And I can tell you, part of the problem with this is and I guarantee you somebody's going to say, by pointing out how litigation abuse impacts men.
Yeah.
This is a weakness that, we're displaying by even framing it around men's experiences. We just need to thump our chest, man our way through it. And I'm saying, look, even going back to the website we just looked at, the feminist website that's framing this is policy. You have judges that are ready to hear litigation abuse, and only in one way, with her as the victim, you as the aggressor. So for her to invoke it, there's already not only policy, depending on the state you're in, there is practice that's readily in place in terms of how people interpret and engage the concept. So it's readily weaponized against you. And unless you address that it exists, see, the issue I do with this channel, one of the things that I've heard people say is, you talk about is victimization. And I'm saying, well, you're being victimized on one level, but more than that, I'm trying to address how you can actually respond and turn the tables. But you can't turn the table if you've never heard of the concept, if you've never reflected on it, if you've never heard of litigation abuse. You can't actually argue against it or argue that it may have been happening to you the whole time. You got to actually be aware that it happens in the first place. And we got to be able to respond to how it's being used, the history of its use, and how we can reverse it, with evidence, if that's what's occurring. And but it starts with us being aware that it's happening. I never reflected on the concept until just
because in the 80s and especially the 90s, they beat this out of men, because men used to protest and go to court and protest and file motions and litigation, and the judges weren't hearing it. So men just pretty much gave up. And by the time we got to the 21st century, men just gave up. It's not going to do any good. You can like Dead Set Anime is going through this right now. Doesn't matter about the paperwork. Doesn't matter what your rights are. What's supposed to happen. Guess what? The judge can say, I don't care. I'm going to do it this way anyway.
Right.
So a lot of men actually give up. Most men actually give up.
So, in my viewpoint, like you could take feminist philosophy actually and turn it on its head and say, and this is, to me, this is like the biggest bonus of what Curry's work is all about, right? And your work as well, okay? The idea is that women are pointing the fingers at men and saying, men are doing all of these horrible things. Look at the horrible things that these men are doing. But when you look at the objective data and the research, you find that women are also doing the very horrible things, the same horrible things that they're complaining about.
Right.
I mean, so the issue is not to, point fingers at people and to try to, humiliate or to, excoriate them. The idea is, let's find out what's really going on so we can mitigate circumstances which give rise to the phenomena that we, want to do away with. But we can't do it if nobody is willing to be objective and impartial and to tell the truth about what's actually going on. Now, if we want to preserve, the separate spheres while pretending that we're not, pretending that we're working, in behalf of justice for, women or, other minority groups or whatever the case may be, but we're flat out lying about it. I just don't see, but the problem with this way of thinking and this kind of philosophical positioning, there's no end to it. Like, I don't think that there will ever be an end to, women crying about their victimization. I don't think that I don't think it'll ever stop. Okay, because once you start, on this path, how do you end it? Okay. Now some argue, okay, well, black people do the same thing. And then, my argument would be, look, we're talking about two different kind of animals here. That's a false equivalency to compare sexism with racism. Now, I'm not saying that sexism is great, that it ought to be endorsed. I'm not substantiating the idea that, men should just be able to tell women what to do and, women just jump and do exactly what men say. That's not the point. But the point is, like, look at the annals of time. And you'll find like what happened in America, in terms of race is quite different from what happened in America in relation to sex. It's a no-brainer to me, okay? All you have to do is look at the pictures of white women in Ku Klux Klan garb, okay? They were present at lynchings. They were present at, segregation rallies where they wanted to preserve it, okay? So the question then becomes, like, how can a group of people who were protagonists and, champions of segregation, colonialism, and slavery, how can they now turn around and declare themselves to be the biggest victims in America? I just and then everybody's running with this. Like, we can't say anything about it. We can't, offer any criticism of it. And, by proxy, if black women latch themselves or tether themselves to this kind of scripting or discourse, they got to get critiqued too. Now, I'm not saying that women are inherently evil or that men are inherently benevolent and good. I'm just saying, like, look, we're all human beings. We both have the capacity to exhibit virtue or vice. Why can't we just acknowledge this, tell the truth about some of the phenomena that's happening without all the political, I was going to say garbage, but with all of the baggage packed onto it? But, I've been talking too long. So
no, it's not that. So what I would say about this is, men and women do have the same capacity as far as being human beings. But when policy allows for one to operate, with no checks and balances, with no requirement of evidence. Notice in the video clip we watched, this is something Pink Book even pointed out when she covered the show. And I think she did an excellent job kind of covering it. She even pointed out the woman in question's name was never exposed.
Never exposed, yeah.
Her face is never exposed. Her identity, and this has happened repeatedly. Women can do this, men cannot. Women cannot, even when found to be lying, right? It just kind of goes away. Her name goes away, and that's the end of the discussion. Men do not have that option.
Look at Ime Udoka for the Boston Celtics, right? Mutual consent. If they both violated company policy, okay? His name was thrown all over the world, right? Globally, in the news. She was never mentioned. You couldn't mention her.
Right.
She's just a victim.
So I'm saying that this kind of thing is being incentivized to operate in one way, even though we both have the same capacities as human beings. I will say what I think it leads to, though, is not only over generations what I think that a group that's able to operate without any kind of checks and balances would develop an entitlement. Not only would I say that because they've been able to operate in a certain way, but I think it also puts us in a situation where, there's no accountability. There's no pushback, and it's difficult to actually have serious conversations about justice because in one vein, we have a policy, we have a law system that operates with women in a different manner than it operates for men, despite the letter of the law, which is often written very neutral.
And you just remember the video you sent me by Themis, okay? Talking about a group of women saying that black women should train black boys to allow black girls to beat on them, to be a punching bag for them without any kind of repercussion.
The video was sent to me, and I sent it to you. You didn't have to put my name in that. I don't even want to.
Well, the thing is, it's relevant. The thing you're socializing boys to be able to take emotional and physical abuse from women without any kind of repercussion. So the girls can free reign as to beat on you, spit on you, take you to court, lie on you with no kind of repercussion.
Well, since you bring it up, we got to at least explain the context, which I wasn't going to do, but since you put it on the table, we got to deal with it. So, this dude, Themis, is on YouTube. I've debated him on Omawale's show.
Yeah.
And he had a show with all women. And shout out to Ace Butterfly. She sent me the show. She gave me the cue. And I'll tell you that if you're going to send me a video, especially over 5 hours, please give me a timestamp because I ain't going to watch it. She gave me a timestamp, and the reason she sent it to me was because he has women on his show quite regularly, I think, And the women that came on the show were arguing that men should just take abuse and that they should not respond, boys and men. They should just receive it. And it was a trip to watch Themis, who's a black male feminist, actually arguing against women who were trying to get him to accept the notion that women should not be responded to and men shouldn't even defend themselves when abused.
Yeah.
They should have the book thrown at them if they respond, even in defense. But they have to.
So what did Themis say about that? I'm interested.
He argued against it. He was trying to say, and I think he had an experience where I think a woman had he'd had an altercation with a woman at some point. So his argument was nobody should be hitting anybody, which I agreed with. But the women kept saying, well, yeah, you're right, but women should be able to hit men and men should just take it. Because it really doesn't hurt you guys anyway. So there was
exactly. So let me say something about that. First and foremost, man, that's a utilitarian argument. Okay, and I don't know if you know what utilitarianism is.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
it's an ethical position that basically asserts that if you're going to perform an action, you should perform the action that increases pleasure and decreases pain for the greatest amount of persons possible. Okay, that's what utilitarianism is. It's developed by an Enlightenment philosopher named Jeremy Bentham. And the idea is you can sacrifice a minority, if it's the case that by doing good. So you create a net gain of happiness. It's called or a hedon or something like that. That's why it's called the hedonic calculus. I mean, you use it in order to determine if that action is going to produce the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest amount of persons possible. Okay. Now, my viewpoint on it is, like all you have to do is just if you have a basic education, you'll understand that the weakness is inherent in this kind of position. Okay. But at the same time, this is my issue with this, right? Women have been arguing in behalf of equality of distribution. So they want distributive justice and they want, equity related to that, but they don't want equity related to retributive justice. They don't want legal sanction.
Right.
They don't want social sanction. Yep. They don't want natural responses to anything that they do that's vicious. Right. Now, in my viewpoint, look, that's unrealistic. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the natural world. It ought not happen in the social or legal world. But here we are in a position where we have to contend with assaults, insults, lies, innuendo about our, pathology and inherent brutality or willingness to display it. So ultimately, we're scapegoats.
Yeah.
And nobody should have to put up with that. And one of the things that I've always thought, the only people who have to take beatings or abuse from anybody or either children related to paternalism and the nature between a child and a parent or a slave. Those are the only two social conditions in which abuse has to be taken. It has to be absorbed. So you mean to tell me like I have to, based upon it creating happiness for you, take in your assault?
Verbal,
it makes no sense.
Verbal and physical.
But I don't know how people who are attuned to justice or say that they are, how they can assume that this is acceptable.
Well, but it gets worse, and this is something that Curry deals with in some of his work recently in the last year. He talks about the way that Black feminists in particular have leaned into stereotypes about Black men and used those stereotypes to their benefit, right? To the Black feminists' benefit. So you have an ongoing legacy in the West as far as how Black masculinity, manhood is being perceived. It's monsterized. It's viewed as inherently vicious and violent. And so when you actually have feminists who weigh into it, who lean into it for their own benefit, that's a whole nother level. In other words, the scenario would be, it's one thing to call the police on your son or your husband, your boyfriend, on a general level. If a situation comes up where you have to call the police, we think nothing of it. But when you're talking about a Black male and you're calling the police under false pretenses as a method of controlling or extending violence by police proxy, right? If you're doing this to Black males, especially as a woman, as a mother, as a wife, as a girlfriend, whatever, if you're doing doing this under false pretenses, it has a whole nother level of impact because you already know the relationship between many black men and the police.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
assumption made about black men. It's a weaponization of stereotype that adds another layer of violence. And if we can't talk about the way that works against us, the way people are using proxy power when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to criminal justice institutions, if we're not able to talk about that, if we're going to silence each other out of a desire to demonstrate some kind of, we're invincible kind of manhood, we further problematize our own situation. So we have to develop the language to call this kind of thing out and talk about it for what it is, right?
And so look, let me just say something, and I'm gonna stop talking for a minute. But like, this is what feminists themselves call hermeneutic injustice. Okay. And ultimately, it's a part of what's called epistemic justice. Justice related to knowing things. But the idea is that you could be unfairly disadvantaged in your ability to understand or communicate your own experiences or your social situations because you don't have the conceptual resources to do so.
Right.
So you don't even know how to, articulate the fact that you're suffering from litigation abuse, or that you're actually going through a form of psychological manipulation, or, you're being gaslit, or you're being falsely accused of something, but, your manhood somehow leaves you vulnerable. It can leave you, this whole adoption of I can't be hurt can expose you to more hurt and harm than you could ever imagine. I mean, like the person who knows that there's a risk associated with running out in the highway, in ongoing traffic, has a greater chance of surviving, crossing the highway than the person who's just like, I'm a man, I'm just going to rush out there anyway. I mean, a certain level of cautiousness and a healthy assessment of risk and danger is a part of intelligence.
Right.
But like a lot of guys are like, they think, that they must be a Marvel or a DC comic hero or something. Like, you can get hurt, man. Like, anybody can kill you, bro. And it's been factually proven and demonstrated, not to disrespect, black women or anything, but like, it's been demonstrated that between 64 and 85 to 90 almost, black men were, in the black community, the biggest victims of intimate partner homicide were black men. And at the same time, and Curry points this out, at the same time, all of these theories about dominance and abuse were being concocted and developed. Here you have right smack dab in your face instances in which you see black men being subjected to intimate partner homicide. And everybody's just talking about, well, what happened to the women? What happened to the women? What happened to the women? What happened to these Negroes that are dead? What happened to them?
But it went further than that. And you've talked about this on previous shows, Gigi. Remember when the immediate response to men being on the receiving end of intimate partner homicide or violence to a greater degree than women, the response was, well, those women must have been protecting themselves, right? Yeah. They must have been protecting themselves. So we have this immediate logic we can kick into that because men are inherently aggressors, black men in particular, and because they're inherently patriarchs, there is no instance where they are actually on the receiving end. The only way we can frame this is around their guilt and their villainy, almost like a comic book. And people would switch into that logic with no research, no analysis into the data. They just switch into it.
Yeah. So in my view, all of this is, is based on white women, to be perfectly honest. Like, their innocence, so the idea that women are more virtuous than men is something that came to prominence during the 18th and the 19th centuries, particularly in Victorian England or Britain, So you saw a shift in cultural attitudes towards women and, the development of something called the cult of domesticity, right? And it basically emphasized the role of women as mothers, wives, caregivers, nurturers, upholders of piety, virtue, submissiveness, docility, domesticity, all of this, okay? But prior to that, like, there wasn't all of this caping for women and just simping. And we use these kind of crass terms, but the idea is like women have been to some degree venerated if they deserve it, but women have also been condemned when they deserve it. This has been a part of Western, a part of Western culture for centuries. until Victorian England and until, the genteel South and, all of these protections associated with white women, and they can't be too close around the niggers, lest they taint and poison the pure virginity and the piety of the white woman. Okay, now vicariously, let's just tell the truth, man. Women in the United States, via the conduit created by white women, are able to enjoy a certain set of privileges that nobody is accepting it exists. Nobody's saying that they exist. Now, white men aren't going to say that they exist because we're top dog or whatever the case may be. But they're the ones responsible for all of this mess, man. Right. They're the ones who passed all the laws. They're the ones who let white women hijack the civil rights movement. It was a racial move. Okay? And we already know what the results are. Now, the question is, how long do we have to sit here and act as if we're deaf, dumb, and blind about all of it? Just to, keep the unity or to keep the peace, which is not really a peace at all. It's a fake peace. Well, if everyone can't speak their piece, it's not a real peace.
This is why I want us to have a conversation about not only language and concept, but I want us to actually be able to impose our worldview, even in our own given situations, and if possible, set legal precedent. Excuse me. I want us to be in a position to do that. So, for example, this is one of the things that I'm trying to use to help us kind of develop this. So I'm taken to defining litigation abuse in terms of how it's used. So you see the first part of it at the top. Once someone separates from an abusive spouse or partner, the abuser may try to keep power and control over the victim by misusing the court system against the victim. For example, filing repeated petitions or motions, so on and so forth. That's from the actual page that we looked at earlier, right? The legal page, the feminist legal page that we were looking at earlier. The bottom half is a different bent. It says, in regard to a Black masculinist interpretation, it involves women's weaponization of family and or criminal courts against Black men. It includes, but is not limited to, false paternity, abuse, violence, criminality, child abuse claims, rape, sex abuse, sexual harassment, and claims to secure child custody to emotionally weaponize children. Lastly, it usually ends with judges leaving the man with legal fees. Right? So I really want us to wrap our heads around how concepts that are presented to us as innocent, it actually can be weaponized against us in particular in very brutal ways. And in the ways they've been brutally used against men have learned to accept as par for the course. When you hear men talk about divorce, when you hear men talk about, I went through this last year with my baby mama or whatever, we went to court, we did this, men will tell you these stories ad nauseum with almost no rage in their voice anymore. It's at a point where this is just reality.
And also you look at what's going on in the college campuses, especially with Black male athletes, right? You have to actually film her giving you permission to have any kind of sexual intercourse. Otherwise, she can just go say, "I didn't consent," and take you through a whole legal process. We have to hire an attorney. You have to go to court. Got to pay fees. That's legal abuse. Same, even amongst the college campuses, right? Getting kicked out of college, getting censured. All reputation being ruined. Okay, same thing.
I had a gentleman write me earlier this morning, and he told me that he had found an older phone of his wife's that was still connected to the phone his wife was currently using. And once he looked through it, he found that, clear cut evidence, pictures, text messages that she was having multiple affairs. When he confronted her about it, if I remember correctly, she actually called the police on him and said that he was abusing her. Especially, I think it was a matter of when he was saying she had to leave. He was putting her out of the house. She called the police. He got handcuffed, taken out of there, and was told that he needed to stay away from the vicinity for a certain period of time. Right. This is an example of, in some respects, of the misuse of the criminal justice industry, law enforcement. But by the time they had to go, file for divorce and so on and so forth, now we're looking at it from a litigative standpoint, and she's willing to use the assumption that Black men are violent criminals in her favor to gain standing in the divorce. See, this is why we have to not only create the language, we actually have to use it. This is why I just did a deposition for a federal case where I'm advocating in a manner that puts these kinds of interpretations of policy on the books. I'm trying to use our experiences to reframe how we look at policies, some of which have been around for the longest, but they've never been analyzed from what Black men experience. And we need to start imposing our worldview and our experiences on how these concepts and policies are practiced for, in order to protect ourselves, and then provide rationale for other men to be able to use as well, right? Again, setting precedent. But it starts with developing the concepts. It starts with having conversations about the interpretive lens that we're using.
Yeah, one of the things that it's important is like what you're doing, like the work you're doing with your recent book that you just got accepted for publication, and then, going and testifying in court, and, just really actually just doing a show. That's, one of the most important things is doing the research itself and developing the nomenclature on your own so that you can then utilize it, right? But, intersectionality started off as a theory that was about interracial discrimination, and then it accepted and adopted some subcultural violence theory, which caricaturized Black men as sexist, rapist, abusers. Right. And it basically asserted that, Black men are a powder keg in the Black community. They're the problem. We're relatively safe. We're relatively innocuous. This is the source or the etiology of harm and pathology. Okay. Everybody knows this. Look, how long do, women get to pretend that like they're an endangered species? I mean, like, how long? Like, I'm just asking the question, like they're whales or something. You know what I'm saying?
Like they're whales.
Like, I'm serious, man. Like they're suffering from habitat loss or disease or like
habitat loss.
No, seriously, man. Like this, it's and the point though is that while all of this is occurring, we're like, as a demographic, not to engage in identity politics, but we're the demographic that's subjected to the most harm, the most virulent and the most aggressive forms of harm that this society has to chalk up are the ones that we're subjected to. And men are taking it upon themselves to just stomach and shoulder all of this and say nothing. And the question is, how long can this last? First of all, how long can you be stupid? I mean, it's one thing to be, dumb, but it's another thing to be plumb dumb. Like I say, I'm some dumb, but I ain't plumb dumb. Okay. And like, I was born at night, but I wasn't born last night. So then the question becomes, like, how long do you have to endure or become attuned to your own exploitation and manipulation? Like, how long do you want to be a scapegoat? Right. Like, nobody wants to be the lamb that's offered up. Like, Jesus did that and got honored as God for having taken on the sins of the world. So what we supposed to take on? The sins of the race?
Yeah, we have so far, right?
Like, this is crazy to me, man. Like, the sins of the race. It's like
Michael Jackson on the cross in The Wiz, right? The Scarecrow. You can't win, you can't get out of the game, can you?
Man, this is I'm trying to get out the game. That's why, I mean, it's a lot of men don't like to discuss their vulnerability, but like I've seen men go through the ringer, man, to the point where even like there are men in the manosphere, like Forrest Windu, who I commemorate every time I do a show, man. That brother was married, we don't know what kind of, psychological issues he was dealing with. Yeah. But he twisted he deleted himself, man. Yeah. Because of the pressure. Like, there are a lot of pressures that Black men go through. I'm not saying that everybody is under a pressure cooker at all times and they, like everybody's just ready to burst at the seams. But having to endure this kind of caricaturization, stereotyping, marginalization, to be looked down upon, not just by the larger society, but to also be pigeonholed into a category by people who are supposed to love you, to take care of you, and to see after you.
Yeah,
man. And then to be told that you're the one that's doing all of this. Like, I could see if it was like, okay, we need to figure out how to solve our issues together. No, it's just like, okay, they're using convenient racist theory in order, to get their way. Like, and who? Well, I mean, it's a lot of guys who are comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with it, man.
But this is how cold it can be. So when I mentioned earlier about the gentleman who caught his wife cheating, and he himself ended up in cuffs. The other thing he told me, right, was not only did he experience this kind of litigative abuse, but his own family, of women most particularly, believed the allegations she made against him with no evidence. She provided no evidence to the court, to the police, but his family, right, on the basis of being women and believing her as a woman, took her word over their own child, over their own family member.
Yeah.
And boy, that's a killing part right there. Like, I mean, I've seen this happen even within my own family. I want you to think about this. Your fidelity to the idea of womanhood is so strong that you would deny, like Peter, I don't know, I forget which one of them that denied Christ.
Peter, 3 times.
You would deny Christ you would deny your own family member 3 times for the sake of living up to some universal idea associated with like female sisterhood, like sorority or something like that. I want you to think about this, man. Do you think white women, when the rubber hits the road and the chips are down, do you think that they're gonna double back all women, or they gonna just ride with their own people?
Yeah.
Just be frank about this, man. Like, what did they do? Everything in them suggests that they were riding with white people prior to the advent of second wave feminism.
Yeah. Even after.
The question,
even after when they took the money out of affirmative action out of black men's hands, where'd they take it to?
They took it to the white boy. They took it back
home. To the own man. To the white.
And one thing people got to understand is, man, and one thing I know for a fact, the attitudes, the psychological profile of most children is developed between the ages of what? 3 and 5. Okay? Early childhood development. Who are children around most between the ages of 3 and 5? It ain't men. So the psychological profile of white men is pretty much nurtured and reproduced, like literally. The patriarchy you say you hate is reproduced by white women. They're the ones that instill it in their little white sons. Now the question is, this is a rhetorical question. I'm not going to answer it, but I mean, let me leave it open then instead of making it a rhetorical question. What are black women reproducing in their sons?
The gynocratic dominance. That's the same thing that things that you experience. They want black mothers to teach their sons to be punching bags for little girls. Okay.
You got to send me that video, man. I got to see that video, man. I got to see that.
I'll forward it to you.
Hold on. Let me shout out Dardar for the donation. It says, but remember, Doc, we're the problem, but they're going crazy over brothers getting their passports. Shout out to Chemistry. It says celebrating our triumvirate of scholars. And I'm gonna repost this one because I want to really acknowledge this generous donation. Egbert says, thank you, Doc, and the scholars, Dr. G. Gigi, BGS, Dr. Neil, Angry Man, etc., for verbiage, dialogue, and statistics. I've been able to speak and nullify statements by misandrous and inform black men. This is important, right? Because it's not just what we can do in court, what we might be able to create in policy, and those are incredibly important. One of the things it also is about is when people actually hear you articulate yourself using the concepts we're talking about.
Right.
It backs people up. They now know that they have to come different. You'll notice that people will change how they speak around you. They'll be they'll have to process differently what they can say in front of you, all because of how you carry yourself and how you articulate arguments in ways that advocate for your own position. So I just want to be clear, you're changing the culture of the environment just by speaking about what we're talking about, what the things that we know, and speaking from a black male standpoint. right?
Yeah.
But it can translate into actually changing the environment over time. Go ahead.
And academic and legal language that can actually use. It's not just common street language.
Absolutely.
In language, yeah.
Shout out
You
to
actually have influence. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
You know, so at the end of the day, bro, like, look, all I can say is, and I told Doc this the other day, man, I'm more of a feminist than most of these women out here, for real. and the reason is because when you take on rights, you don't just take on privileges and access to, you know, negative liberty without a corresponding set of responsibilities and duties. If, like, look at any ethical textbook or textbook on ethics and see if not there is alongside the delineation of rights, a delineation of responsibilities. You can't have responsibilities. I mean, you know, you can't have rights without responsibilities.
Right.
Okay. Soon as you get rights, then you have to be responsible and you have duties. Okay. It's a feature and a function of what rights are. Okay. But the problem is when you kind of take on the approach to rights and responsibilities in a piecemeal fashion. You want to do away with gender, but you want to preserve the benefits associated with, you know, antiquated notions about the essences of men and women. I thought we were doing away with that. Up to the point where now you can just all of a sudden change your essence, you know, by saying, well, now I'm no longer green gorilla. I'm greeny gorilla Anna.
Okay.
Like, I'm serious though. Like, I mean, you know, like, this is just how you can do it. Like, right now, I just can unilaterally decide that I'm green gorilla Anna, or I'm green glorilla, okay? And it just is what it is, and you got to accept it. Like, all I can tell you is, look, when they introduced sex into the Civil Rights Act, and they moved away from the trajectory of Reconstruction, this is what we got. And now white guys, I mean, they are a little bit taken aback by this. If you watch their shows and stuff like this, I mean, it's impacting them, not to the extent that it's impacting us. But it's beginning to irritate. To irritate these guys. Okay?
They're doing something about it. That's why you see all this movement to actually push this back the other way. They're becoming Negroized. Let's put it that way.
But the point though is, see, initially they let sex be introduced in order to countermand black men being able to have the same kind of rights as so-called white women. So, because there has to be a natural hierarchical order, right? Like a ordinal scale where there's white men, white women, maybe perhaps black men and black women, and, you know, whatever. There has to be some ordinal scale. And by dog it, ain't no way that a nigger is about to be over my wife. I mean, think about what they did now, okay? Or a black woman is about to be over Miss Ann.
Over Miss Ann, yeah.
So they fixed the law. They knew what they were doing, and they did it purposefully. I mean, look, I've gone over this on my show. Howard Smith, the Democrat from Virginia, introduced sex into the Civil Rights Act on purpose. And then he banned it with women, you know, who were working, you know, for suffrage. I mean, not suffrage, but, you know, for like
feminists.
I guess second wave feminists were working, pushing towards greater freedoms in terms of economic freedom. Okay, that's what the whole context was: the ability to work. Okay, to compete for jobs and professional school slots and stuff like that. So that's what they were concerned about. And white guys were like, you know, hey, look, we got to keep it in house, and they did.
They did.
Yeah. And so now we're fighting over the crumbs and acting and pretending that we're engaged in revolutionary action. This is corporate tokenism, man. This is the when people look back on our history right now and they look at what we're doing and like some of the key, you know, theories of, you know, politics, post-civil rights politics, man, they're going to say, look, this is all milquetoast, corporate back patronage, and, you know, ass-kissing, trying to get white people to pat you on the back for some hog maws, some chitlins, and some pig feet.
Damn.
Yeah.
And some butter biscuits and blankets. Because it's even, bro, Dr. Neil, Ronald today, man, gave us this video, man. Like,
yeah.
You know, the details of the video are about, like, if black women are free, and that's it, you know, the quote, because, you know, that's from the Combahee River Collective. Everyone else will be free because we will have eliminated all the systems of oppression.
Right.
Because we're the ones subjected to all of them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
So even now, they're beginning to walk back some of, you know, like, of what's going on contemporarily because they can see what it's evolved into. It's evolved into a whole bunch of token Negroes, like Ebony K. Williams. That's a token Negro right there, man. That's not a revolutionary black person, man. Looking out for what's going, you know, what for what's good for the collective black masses. That's that's a token Negro looking to find out what she can get while they're getting this good.
Gigi is talking about a video that I think the keynote lecturer is Barbara Christian, you know, black feminist. You know, and
Barbara
it's
Smith. Barbara Smith.
Is it Barbara Smith? I always get the name. Yeah, Barbara Smith. My apologies. But the thing I noticed that was interesting is one of the questions that came to her was whether or not black feminism had kind of produced a kind of self-aggrandizement, you know, kind of environment. And so it was real interesting as far as that. So I think, you know, the reflection is kind of happening, but, you know, they retreated back into comfortable interpretations of things that don't really challenge, you know, black feminism from within. So, I mean, I think we have to keep pushing what we know empirically about the experiences of black men, because we can't afford to fall into that kind of self-referential, you know, pat ourselves on the back and leave it at that kind of dynamic. This is why we use empirical data to the extent that we do. That guides what we do and what we don't. Otherwise, we just continue to reproduce assumptions based on what feels good. And that doesn't go anywhere for us. We have to actually deal with the world as it actually is. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have these kind of conversations about how we can actually use concepts to push us further.
Yeah, man. I'm all for men learning how not to be subjected to hermeneutic injustice.
Yeah. We have to dismantle the myth bit by bit. And so that's actually what we're doing. A lot of this is lies and myths. Go ahead, Gigi.
And the only way that could happen is by men actually having the testicles.
Yes.
I mean, let's just be frank about this, because like even in feminist, even within the context of feminist philosophy, when talking about epistemic justice, yes, even then, okay, there's a situation in which it's basically known that there's testimonial injustice and there's hermeneutic injustice. Like, testimonial injustice has to do with you not even being like able to say anything, or when you say something, whatever it is that you say is invalid because of who you are as a person saying it. So you're a black man, oh, well, you know what Kant said about black people in testimony. Well, he was black from head to foot, a pure proof that whatever he said, whatever came out of his mouth was stupid. Now, I mean, this is the way that it is, okay? Now, in my viewpoint, you got to talk this out. Now, some people will say it's weak or whatever the case may be. Look, that video I was shown today, man, about that one guy that you gave me, Dr. Johnson, man, that had me incensed, man.
Or the one I played earlier in the show?
Well, no, you didn't play it at all. You just, it's about like a black guy basically saying that like black men not, because I think it was a reaction to Dennis Sperling.
Oh, it was, yeah. Dennis actually posted it on his channel. He posted someone who was criticizing him in a short video. So he posted it. I don't know if it's still there, but I would assume it is. But go ahead.
Yeah, well, my whole thing is, man, had the nuts to call us pussies if that's what you think we are.
Yeah.
So we can get this over with. You know what I'm saying? Like, because to be perfectly honest, I don't want to fight anybody, but I'm a kufi smacker. I'll smack the kufi out of motherfucker's head.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry to say that, man, but like I'm bringing out the Dipset, the Cameron, and the Jim Jones in me. You know what I'm saying? I will smack a Kofi.
That's the G. That's the G.
It is what it is. Like it is what it is. You can be on a God body 5%er. You can be on the Afrocentric. You can be on B1. If you on some bullshit, them guys can be on some bullshit too.
Yeah, they often are.
Especially when it comes to appeasing the gynocracy. I mean, that's what we learn. We learn from birth how to prioritize that. I mean, in many ways, you learn even as an infant that your well-being depends on her mood. So appeasing women is something that even black male children, in fact, learn very young. Right?
But if that's what you think, do you really honestly think that everybody in this space is like some 97-pound weakling with zits on his face that has the incapacity to go out here and do anything in the world?
Eating Cheetos and Diet Coke, huh?
Oh, bro, man, bruh, come on, man, like that. Keep thinking that way, and then one of them guys gonna end up getting Kofi smacked. I'm just being honest about it. Like, you can't keep like black men are going in on black women to some degree, and the reason why is because their voices have been suppressed for so long. Now it sounds like disrespect. But think about the quiet disrespect black men have been enduring for the past 5 to 6 decades.
You know, the clearest evidence of that, I don't know how many of you guys watched Dr. Ronald Neal's post last night. He put a video on his channel of him. I want to say it was BET.
It might have been. It was Puffy's React TV, I do believe it was.
React TV. So it was an interview he did on Kevin Samuels. It was him and I guess this dude Ace Metaphor.
Ace Metaphor, yeah.
And so the way they framed it, they did this overview of Kevin Samuels and they cherry picked these moments in his show where he did something that was particularly frustrating for black women. And then they brought it to Ace and Dr. Neal to address. And Dr. Neal told me that they took out a lot of his responses. They edited out a lot of what he had to say about this. But one of the things that was so glaring is they kept talking about how Kevin Samuels was oppressing women and how this group of black men online were helping him. And it was just unjust. It was gross. It was unjust. It was this, and the thing that I couldn't, and of course, you know, the Ace Metaphor was the feminist in the space. And so he was coming in, you know, kind of riding that wave. But the thing that got me is y'all smooth just stepped over 40 years of misandry on television, in film, in popular culture. We've watched careers grow rooted in misandry. We've watched television channels and institutions go up behind Oprah and others, Terry McMillan, you name it. There's been a whole legacy built on misandry.
Yeah.
And the first opportunity in the last few years where black men have publicly started to speak out, most notably one guy on YouTube with a YouTube channel, and all of a sudden the heavens fall and there's all kind of injustice going on. You literally don't compare one YouTube content creator to 40 years of misandry. It can happen. It makes no sense whatsoever. So now Kevin Samuels is the face of black men who are the worst things walking on the earth. But we're going to smooth act like the three of us, for example, haven't seen what we've seen in the last 40 years.
But you know what it is.
How a lot of that media melded in with our own families, right? Female-led families, most particularly, because Gen X were the first generations to have, a high percentage of female-led households.
Right.
So that culture go hand in hand with the women in our families and what we saw on TV and in film. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gigi. What were you going to say?
No, man. I mean, look, man, to me, what we've been witnessing for the past 50 to 60 years is black women's Me Too movement prior to the Me Too movement. Like, I mean, because there's been many Me Too movements, but I mean, if you think about it, what intersectionality was when, she created Mapping the Margins. We're not talking about the first paper she wrote in 89, but the one she wrote in 91. Okay. Basically, it turned from interracial discrimination to intraracial discrimination based upon the claims made by dominant feminists.
Yes.
And ultimately what it results in is the expansion of the carceral state for black men. And it utilizes stereotypes about the dysfunction and the pathology and the brutishness of black men. And what it actually does is it situates black women closer to whiteness.
Well, and let me be clear. I got 5 minutes before I got to leave for this class. But I think BGS has framed this as 30 pieces of silver?
Yes, 30 pieces of silver. Yeah, that's what it amounted to. Thanks to Gigi's work, putting that piece together.
Man, hey, I'm here to do it. You know what I'm saying? I ain't going nowhere. Some people gonna quit the manosphere. The turntables might wobble, but they won't fall down. That's just Run DMC.
Yeah,
Back in the day,
you threw your men under the bus to get a better position in the academy, in politics, and the corporate world. That's what you did.
And then you took the elevator provided for you to advance on one level, and then turned around and told men that they weren't shit. I mean, this is a language that I've been hearing for decades. When I hear Ebony Williams, or is that her name, become the focus of conversation, I'm like, she's like all the misandrists I've been hearing since the 1980s.
Yes, yeah. She didn't say anything different.
Nothing.
She's shocked.
Here's the thing. This seriously screws me up in the head, right? Mm-hmm. So you took so let's say, for example, it is masculine to go get a job and to hunt because it's getting a job is associated with hunting and going to get it, right? Why would you put somebody in the position of a hunter that's not going to share the catch? Why? Makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't why not employ the person who's going to share the catch instead of the person who's going to say like little Smeedle or something. This is my precious, my precious. Like who wants to deal with Smeedle, man?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to deal with Smeedle, bro. Who wants to deal with an arrogant, self-absorbed, narcissistic person saying that?
Right.
I created a series. I followed white women in creating policy that gave me the capacity to be on an equal footing. But now that I am on an equal footing in terms of earning power, whatever it is that I earn, I'm keeping for me. I have no intentions on sharing it with the person who I'm partnering with. In fact, forget a partner now, because I am now God incarnate because I got a corporate job.
Yep.
Like as if, and this is why I assume, I haven't watched the video fully, but I can guarantee you, a bunch of older feminists are going to look at and assess what they see happening contemporarily with movements that they instantiated. Okay, and they're going to have to be critical of it because it's morphed, it's transmogrified into an aberration.
Yeah.
Because these people were socialist, anti-capitalist. They were about trying to create systems, I assume, of distributive justice that were more equitable and fair, not to double down on corporate back patronage and tokenism and neoliberalism.
Look here.
It has to be like putting your fingernails over a chalkboard to hear contemporary women claim that they're the inheritors of black feminism, while simultaneously saying things like, "I would never date a bus driver."
Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, her mama was a damn bus driver.
Exactly.
Ain't that the pot calling the kettle black?
Exactly. Look here, fellas, I got to close it out here. I appreciate both of you. This is definitely a conversation that needs to continue because litigation abuse is I'm really using it as an example.
Yeah.
How we need to start identifying what we've been actually experiencing and using policy and really, nomenclature and to our benefit. It's time we turn the tables and we start to advocate for ourselves.
I remember the first black, all black male school in I think it was Detroit, was actually taken to court by black women.
Yeah,
litigation abuse. Well, what about the girls? Okay,
I hear it, and we hear that a lot. But again, thank you both. I appreciate it. I'm gonna head to this class. It is the last class of the semester. So.
Oh, congrats, man. Pour out a little liquor out there.
Hey, beware the knee pads and the begging cups, man. Okay. On the last day.
Pour out a little liquor, man.
And I make up the whole semester with a half-page paper doc. Anyway, I'll let both of y'all later, man. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Be good, bro. Peace out.
All right. Also wanted to shout out MS Delta guy, much appreciated for the generous donation. There's peace and love to the brothers, much appreciated. Thank you, sir. Dead set, man. I need to get your contact, brother, because a couple of these issues I've been wanting to hear you weigh in on, and I don't think I have a direct contact for you. So Holler at me through BGS if need be, but I want to be able to reach you and get your insight on a few things and have some dialogue. Anyway, appreciate y'all coming through tonight. Give me your thoughts and reflections, most particularly about litigation abuse, and tell me if you think that it should be something that should be added to the Black male political agenda. The reason I say that is because there's at least 3 different areas of the agenda that litigation abuse falls into: family court reform, criminal law reform and law enforcement, and intimate partner violence / homicide policy reform. In other words, the whole idea of just litigation abuse by itself ties into multiple areas in terms of what Black men are grappling with. So I just put the link for the 17-point Black male political agenda in the chat. I will also put it in the description box. Give me your ideas and suggestions as to whether or not I should add it and how you think it should best be used. But if you also have stories and things you want to share, it's much appreciated. So please do so. Y'all have a good night. Peace.